My name's Randy Bowman, and I have a lot to talk about today. A lot to talk about. We're going to talk about the NFL and my thoughts after week one. How terrible is it to be a Jets fan? Oh, I feel so bad for that fan base. All the hype for Aaron Rodgers in the offseason. 4 plays, he's done. Oh, man. I feel, honestly, legit bad for that fan base. But we'll talk NFL, my early thoughts after week one. We're going to talk Mizzou, Kansas State. They have a game on Saturday, sold out at Faurot Field, 11 a.m. kick between the old Big 12 rivals. And saw a quote from a Kansas State player talking about how much they hate the SEC. So a little chirping going on from the Wildcat side. And why not? I mean, they stomped Mizzou last year, so in Manhattan. So we'll talk a little bit about Kansas State and Mizzou on Saturday. But first, I haven't talked about the Cardinals in a while. The Cardinals have been out of it for a long time. This has been easily their worst season, only their in several decades, easily. And this is only the second time in the last 24 seasons they finished under 500. They right now have the 5th worst overall record, which would get them in the draft lottery for Major League Baseball with a top 5 pick, which they haven't had based on record in over 25 years. They ought to be able to get an impactful future star with that top 5 pick. But I wanted to take a different spin on it. You've got other people around town who just continue to bash the Cardinals and bash Mozeliak. And bash Ali Marmol. I wanted to take a little positive spin on this today. Because I do think from an offense perspective, and I'm just going to do the offense today. There'll be another show down the road where I'll focus on the pitching. But on the offense, there are positives coming back for 2024 when you look at this lineup. I have a hard time looking at what's coming back and thinking to myself, boy, they're not going to be good. Injuries had a lot to do with how this got derailed this season. Lars Nootbaar hurt a lot this year. Tyler O'Neill missed most of the year injured. Nolan Gorman in the last 2 months has had back injuries. Now he's on the IL again with a hamstring injury. He's probably done for the season. Contreras has been on the IL. This team and their core, Dylan Carlson's been hurt a lot. Now he's having ankle surgery. This core has just been decimated with injuries. That's part of the equation. Whether you want, and I know some people will listen to this and go, "Oh, you're making excuses." It's the reality. If the Atlanta Braves had 3 or 4 of their star players or best players out injured most of the season, the Atlanta Braves wouldn't have the best record in baseball. Let's just throw that out there, okay? But let me talk about some positives offensively for the Cardinals coming back in 2024. First, let me start with Paul Goldschmidt. When you look at his numbers, he'll be 36 next year, 1 year left on his deal. 26 doubles, 24 homers, 74 RBIs, 271 average, 450 slugging. All sound okay. Let me put this in perspective. This is his lowest batting average at 271 since 2019. Lowest RBI total since 2014 for a full season. The lowest slugging percentage of his career this year. And his second lowest OPS at 814 since his rookie season. So Paul Goldschmidt, after an MVP year last year, really dipped this year at age 35. Can he get some of that back in 2024? I don't know. Can the Cardinals, who have made it clear they're going to move players in the offseason, I hate to say it, but is Paul Goldschmidt a candidate to be moved in the offseason with 1 year remaining on his contract to go get some young pitching? or younger pitching. And if you're not planning on re-signing Goldschmidt after next year, if the long-term plan is not to re-sign him, then why not get something for him? I'm looking at 2023 for Goldschmidt as a down year, his worst of his career, you could argue. Even though his numbers aren't terrible, for him, they're the worst of his career. So, can you or would you think about moving him in the offseason to get pitching? I don't think I'd be opposed to it. I love Paul Goldschmidt. He is a Cardinal, man. The way he carries himself, he by all accounts, he loves St. Louis, loves playing here. He would have to approve the deal, I believe. So I don't know if he's going anywhere. I think that is kind of a long shot. But if he stays, will he be motivated at 36 to have a bounce back season? I think the answer to that would be yes. I think he looks at these numbers and look at his production this year, and that motivates Goldschmidt in the offseason, and he comes back with a vengeance next year. Will he have the best season of his career at age 36? Probably not. Will he be better than he was this year? I would bet on Paul Goldschmidt if you're going to keep him, which is one of the reasons why I do think he has value in a trade. So whatever happens with Goldschmidt, you could get good young major league pitching for him in 2024, I would believe. And if you don't move him, I feel like he's going to be motivated to have a real good year next year. Nolan Arenado, 270, only a 319 on base percentage. He walked only 39 times this year. 468 slug, 787 OPS. Let me tell you, this is his lowest slugging percentage as a Cardinal. His lowest of his career slugging percentage, except for 2020 when he played 48 games before getting hurt. He had a higher slugging or a lower slugging percentage that year. But when he plays a full season, this year, Nolan Arenado's lowest slugging percentage. His OPS and his rookie year all play into this year being the lowest since his rookie year and his 48-game year. Fewest home runs and RBIs since 2014. Fewest doubles of his career when he's played a full season. And most strikeouts in a full season since 2018. So even Nolan Arenado, we know, if you've been paying attention, had a down year by his standards. 25 doubles, 26 homers, 89 RBIs. That guy's not going anywhere. And if I had to make a bet on a person having a bounce back year after a subpar season for him, it will be Nolan Arenado. I think he comes back with a vengeance next year. So now you've got two veterans, one who's won an MVP, one who's been close to winning an MVP, who are consistent all-star players who by their own standards had down years. When they come back in 2024, man, I wouldn't count either of these two out. Goldschmidt and Arenado, if they are here next year, will have bounce-back seasons, in my opinion. Now, let's look at some of the other guys if we're going to talk positives. Wilson Contreras, everyone early on in the season. Oh, boy, Mo screwed it up again. What a terrible signing. Now, I'm going to put this in perspective after I talk about the positives, right? Wilson Contreras' numbers, if you look at his career numbers offensively, okay? His career batting average is 257. This year with the Cardinals, he hit 262. His career on base percentage, 349. Cardinals this year, 354. Career slugging, 460. Cardinals this year, 462. OPS for his career, 809. Cardinals this year, 815. Right on his career numbers. Exactly what Mo wanted out of Wilson Contreras. This is what you signed. Everyone's like, oh, he's having a bad year and he's a terrible catcher. We knew he wasn't a great catcher. That, if you're going to nitpick this free agent signing, you're going to say, yes, Mozeliak sold it as this is our catcher every day to back up Yadier Molina. And that has not been the case because Contreras has only caught 86 games this year. He's DH'd 30 times. So, no, he is not the 140, 145 game slide him in where Yadier Molina was, because when Contreras isn't catching, you have a very a much worse offensive option catching in Andrew Knizner. But I'm going to get to Knizner because so many positives for Knizner this year. Just wait. All right. Contreras. Let me give you some other numbers, by the way. This guy, what a year he's had. Started slow. Last month, he slugged .533, 6 homers, 17 RBIs in 21 games over the last month. Versus lefties, he hit .290, slugged .533, and had an .880 OPS. Second half of the season, this guy was a monster. .307, .392 on base percentage, slugged .547, and drove in 30 runs in 42 games in the second half of the season. Had a monster July, hitting .429 with 3 homers, 9 RBIs, 6 doubles. And so far in September, he's played 8 games, .379, slugging .793, 4 homers, 12 RBIs in 8 games. Contreras has been what the Cardinals wanted offensively. He has. It's a great signing by Mo. I don't care what anybody says. Now, let's temper that. Maybe not great, because if you have those numbers every day at catcher, then there's another spot in the lineup you can put production in. If he's not catching every day, you have a lesser offensive player catching, and that's Knizner or Herrera, who played this year. One more number on Contreras. .320 with runners in scoring position this year. Slugged .570 with runners in scoring position. He's a clutch offensive player. And from an offensive perspective, if he's in your lineup every day, what an ad. A great ad offensively. Again, you wish he caught more games, but let's get rid of that notion. The reality is he's going to catch a half to 2/3 of the games next year. Somewhere in that area, he'll catch, if he's healthy, 100 games, let's say. But he'll DH, and he's always in the lineup, and he'll mash. And he did this year, right on his numbers. All right. Our next positive coming into next year is Nolan Gorman. Nolan Gorman, 23 years old. You have to take the good and the bad with Gorman, right? Gorman's 23, and we already know what kind of hitter he's going to be. He's going to be streaky. He's going to be on fire at some points, and he's going to be terrible in others. It's just the nature of the beast with Nolan Gorman. His season is probably over. He's on the IL with an injured hamstring. He had back issues this year. So Nolan Gorman, injury-wise, that's a concern. But in 119 games, 27 homers, first on the team, leading. More homers than Goldschmidt, more homers than Arenado. Now, we have, 16 games left in the season. They may pass him. But 27 homers, 76 RBIs, 805 OPS. And actually, here's a positive. In 73 at-bats this year against lefties, and I'd like to see him play more against lefties next year as he gets a little more seasoned. 260, 361 on-base percentage, 480 slug against lefties in 73 at-bats. Let me tell you why that's important. Last year, in his rookie year, he only hit 211 against lefties and only slugged 316. Could not hit for power against lefties. Did it this year. I think he'll get more time in the lineup as a regular player, especially against lefties in 2024. The second half of the season, Gorman hit 252 and slugged 519 and 874 OPS. He absolutely mashed in April and May, 13 homers and 41 RBIs. And in July, he had 18 RBIs and 7 home runs. He had a horrible June. And so, look, you got to take the good with the bad with Gorman. But there aren't a lot of left-handed bats at his age in the major leagues that have that kind of power. There's a lot of talk about Nolan Gorman might be a player the Cardinals trade in the offseason. Man, I would hate that. 23-year-old, insane power. I wouldn't trade Nolan Gorman. Now, look, they may have to, right? You got to trade from offensive depth to get good young pitching, which is what they're going to need. But boy, would I be upset if Gorman were included in a deal. 23 years old. Also, by the way, this year, he was a clutch hitter, runners in scoring position, 271 and slugged 626. All positives for me. I'm going to take the good and the bad with Gorman. He's going to slump. He's going to go through stretches. But, man, when he's on, his power is insane from the left side. You've got Goldschmidt and Arenado, who are going to come back in 2024 with a chip on their shoulder. Contreras did what he did, like he does every year. Gorman. And now let's talk Jordan Walker, 21 years old. Over the last 2 weeks, he's hitting .381, slugging .738, 3 doubles, 4 homers, 10 RBIs in 11 games. He's only hitting .223 against lefties. To me, that's a rookie thing, because a right-handed hitter, he should be mashing lefties. He'll get better at that next year. He's got this season under his belt. Check out a couple of months he's had this year. In June, he slugged .549, hit .338 in 21 games. So far in September, .605 slugging percentage, hitting .316, and his on-base percentage in both of those months over .350. So he's getting on base. Runners in scoring position, not terrible for a 21-year-old rookie, hitting just .258. Doesn't sound great, but for 21 years old in clutch spots, first year in the majors, that's not terrible. Walker, Gorman, Contreras, Goldschmidt, Arenado, coming back in 2024. Mason Wynn, not hitting well. Let's be honest, not hitting well. He's overwhelmed. However, he's 21 years old. This is rookie year. First exposed, and by the way, technically he's not a rookie till next year. The fact that he gets exposed this year going into next year is huge. He'll be 22 next year, already have a couple of months of Major League Baseball under his belt. Look at this. 85 chances, 176 innings at shortstop. He's made 1 error. Defensively, the guy's already Major League ready. He just has to catch up off it. Let's remember, Cardinal fans, Ozzie Smith came over here, was not an offensive player, a career .220 or .230 hitter, but an elite defender, and turned himself into a good hitter. I have no doubt Mason Wynn's going to be a good hitter at this level. Look what he did at AAA. .288, .474 slugging, .834 OPS, 18 homers, stole 17 bases, and had 61 RBIs in 105 games. He'll be fine. Give him, he's got to get experience. I'm not worried about Mason Wynn. All right. Now here's some. So those are 6 guys that should be in the lineup every day. Goldschmidt, Arenado, Gorman, Walker, Kisner, and Contreras. Right? 6 guys. Let's talk about another guy who should be in the lineup every day is Lars Nootbaar. Lars Nootbaar has been struggling all season with injuries. He's had this injury, that injury. He can't get into a groove. However, here's some positives with Nootbaar. Second half of the season, 41 games, he hit .295, on-base percentage of .408. That's insane. .530 slugging percentage, 8 homers, 9 doubles, 18 RBIs, and he's walked as much as he struck out. You don't see that in Major League Baseball. Lars Nootbaar has a great eye, works counts, draws walks. This year, his on-base percentage is .375. And in the leadoff spot this year, his on-base percentage .376. Plus, he's got thump at the top of the order. Ricky Henderson is a Hall of Famer. I'm not comparing him to Ricky Henderson. But Ricky Henderson in his career, everyone thinks of Ricky Henderson and they go, oh, the guy's a great leadoff hitter. Drew walks, stole a ton of bases. He also had power. He'd hit 20, 24 homers a year. I think Nootbaar can hit 15 to 18 home runs a year as a leadoff hitter. He just proved over the second half what we've all known about or thought about him. He can produce, he can get on base, and he's got a little pop. And we all know he's a good defender. This year, with runners in scoring position, he hit .321, a clutch hitter. So to me, when you're coming back, 321 with runners in scoring position. When you're coming back next year and you're looking at who are going to be my regular guys that are in the lineup every day. And if you don't trade any of these guys, right? Some of these guys, one or two of these guys could be traded. You know, Newt Bart, people are going to ask for him. Gorman, teams are going to ask for him. Left-handed power and a left-handed guy that can get on base who's a good defender and provides energy. Those guys are sought after. And so it wouldn't surprise me if the Cardinals traded one of those two guys to get young pitching. And that would kill me, but they need it. They need young pitching. But let's say these guys offensively come back in 2024. Goldschmidt and Arenado, again, chip on their shoulder. Contreras should be in the lineup every day, catching or DHing. Gorman, that's 4. Walker, that's 5. Wynn, that's 6. Lars Nootbaar. That is 7 productive players that if you just put them in the lineup every day and stop messing with the platoons and moving people around and changing the lineup every day and making sure Alec Burleson gets at bats. No. These 7 guys in 2024, if they play every day without injury, this lineup's going to be lethal. I'm telling you. That's a positive for next year. Tyler O'Neill. Let's talk about him. I know that the spin will be negative for Tyler O'Neill. I get it. He can't stay healthy. That's his biggest problem. I would argue, and I don't think Tyler O'Neill would like this, but I would argue you keep Tyler O'Neill. If you have your 7 regulars, you keep Tyler O'Neill around, and he is a part-time outfielder. He's your 4th outfielder, and he plays 2, 3, 4 times a week. The thing with Tyler O'Neill is when he's healthy, he produces. The last 2 weeks, he's hitting .321, slugging .607. In 10 games in July when he was healthy, he hit .324, slugged .441, .880 OPS. But he cannot stay healthy. I don't know that he'll be able to do a 162-game grind. He hasn't proven it. He's done it once in his career, and he had a monster year. He had 34 home runs. If you could get something for that potential, he's got to be a candidate to be moved in the offseason because you can't count on him. But if he's here, how about we maybe don't commit to him playing 7 days a week? Let's commit to him playing 3 or 4 times a week and keep those 7 regulars that I just mentioned in the lineup every day. All right, we have a few more minutes before we need to go to break, and I want to get to some of these other Cardinals before we go to break. How about, real quick, Andrew Kisner? I wanted to talk about him. This year, he has surprised offensively. For the season, 240, slugged .439. He's hit 10 home runs. Those are okay numbers for a backup catcher and okay numbers for a part-time catcher. The thing I've been hearing when listening to some of the experts around town is that he is a lot like Yachty in the way he prepares and studies the game. He's leading meetings before games to talk about pitchers' game plans, even on days he doesn't catch. So, to me, that is a valuable asset to have on the team. And if he catches 50, 60 games during a season, I'm okay with that. This year in July, he had a big year, 353, slugged 647. He had a big month, 12 RBIs in 10 games. Slugged 596 in May, drove in 11 runs in 15 games. So he's got moments where he produces offensively. But defensively and game planning and prep, I like that he'll be hopefully coming back next year. Plus, you have Ivan Herrera waiting in the wings. And Herrera had a pretty good minor league season. Look at this. 292, a 442 on base percentage. 442 on base percentage. 25 doubles, 9 homers, 56 RBIs. In 6 seasons in the minor leagues, Herrera, who is only 23, 389 on base percentage. He's only 23. And so now you've got a little bit of depth at catcher. To me, that's a positive. All right. We talked about O'Neill. Injuries are the main thing with him. How about Richie Palacios? This dude we grabbed off the scrap heap from Cleveland is hitting .311 this year, .340 on base, .622 slugging percentage as a part-time player. He's 26 years old. This is a guy that played 3 seasons in college and stole 76 bases. He has 48 steals in 4 minor league seasons. His minor league career on base percentage was .392, .386 at AAA. And at AAA in his career, he's walked 122 times, struck out 132 times. He walks as much as he strikes out. The guy gets on base. He has proven it in the minor leagues. And at Memphis this year, hit .299. This, to me, is a candidate for 4th, 5th outfielder. Bench player, off the bench, provides a spark, plays defense, can run. He can pinch run. Left-handed bat. I think he's opened some eyes for the Cardinals. And I think he'll compete for a roster spot next year. So you got a little depth. By the way, if you're looking to deal some of the extra outfielders, if you want to, Tommy Edman, very valuable utility player. He can play multiple positions, but he's not great offensively. Brendan Donovan. I like Brendan Donovan. Guy gets on base. He's got a little thump, but he's very valuable in terms of he can play multiple positions. If you want to dangle those guys in the offseason to get pitching, then you've got a guy like Richie Palacios waiting in the wings as an outfielder. Dylan Carlson, I don't think you're going to get much for him if you try to trade him. But he's going to be a depth outfielder, in my opinion, next year. All right, some guys that are on their way before we go to break. And I don't know that they'll make an impact next season, but they will very soon. This guy we got from the Rangers, Thomas Saggese, 21-year-old utility player, does the same thing Tommy Edman does. This year in the minor leagues between AA and AAA, he played 129 games. He hit .311, .378 on base, .540 slugging percentage. Excuse me. 30 doubles, 25 homers, 107 RBIs in the minors at Springfield. Since he's gotten to Springfield after the trade with the Rangers, he's done nothing but mash. .331, slugged .662. His OPS is over 1,000. 29 RBIs in 33 games. He's hit 10 home runs. 21-year-old, basically Tommy Edman, except he hits right-handed. Can play multiple positions. He can play the infield and the outfield. He plays outfield spots. Again, if you want to dangle Tommy Edman for some pitching, you have a guy waiting, coming soon. Also, 2 other guys I want to talk about real quick before we go to break. I know we're at break time. The stolen bases coming back in Major League Baseball. People are stealing bases because of the pitch clock and the bigger bases. We have 2 guys in the minor leagues who at Mike Antico, who played at Springfield this year, stole 52 bases, hit .263, on-base percentage of .349, left-handed hitting outfielder. Victor Scott, I talked about him before on this show. He's only 22 years old at Springfield this year. 43 steals, 93 steals total in the minor leagues. He hit .327 for Springfield. He's only 22. Another left-handed hitting bat who can play the outfield. So you have guys on the way. You have a little depth in the minor leagues. You're going to add speed at some point. And the Cardinals, historically love speedster outfielders, and hopefully they get back to a little bit of that. I will talk positives for Cardinals pitching, believe it or not, in future shows. But that's how I look at the offense this year. One last thing before I go to break. The Atlanta Braves, they play the same guys every day. Every day. They don't mess with the lineup. They're the best team in baseball. The Washington Nationals are one of the worst teams in baseball. They decided after the All-Star break, here's our starting 9, 8. They're going to play every day. They have a winning record in the second half. The Washington Nationals, believe it or not. Play the same guys every day. Get a lineup together, have your bench, and play them every day. Let them get into grooves. We have 7 guys we can play regularly in 2024 that if they're healthy, they will produce. This is Randy Molman. You're listening to The Mole Hole. There are positives for the Cardinals on offense in 2024. When we come back, Mizzou, Kansas State, my NFL thoughts in week 1 right after this.
El Potro Restaurant and Market, located at 6920 Manchester Avenue, 1 block east of McCausland, offers the finest variety of Mexican and Central American groceries and goods. El Potro Restaurant serves authentic Mexican and Central American cuisine, including daily specials, not to mention the best horchata and tastiest margaritas in St. Louis. Open 7 days a week. El Potro, 6920 Manchester Avenue, 1 block east of McCausland.
Folks, it's time to let You've Got Maids focus on cleaning your home so you can focus on life. Whether you need weekly, bi-weekly, one-time cleaning, your home will be cleaned to your highest expectations. Your satisfaction is 100% guaranteed. You can get a free no-obligation estimate today. See how little it can cost to have all of your house cleaning needs met by You've Got Maids and their trained maids. All you have to do is go to you'vegotmaids.com, enter your zip code and a little bit of information about your dwelling, and they'll come back immediately with a free estimate. You've Got Maids offers cleaning services ranging from deep cleaning to simple everyday cleaning on a schedule that matches yours. Live well, laugh often, love much. Stop cleaning your house. Turn it over to You've Got Maids at you'vegotmaids.com. Let's let this breathe. Oh, yeah. MIZ, the Tigers, taking on Kansas State Saturday, 11 a.m. kickoff. Sellout at Faurot Field. It'll be a sellout on October 7th as well, already sold out for the LSU game, which, you know, at Mizzou. LSU, top 10 team coming to Columbia. That game is sold out. The Kansas State game is sold out. I am hearing, I don't know what the story is, I'm hearing the Memphis game at the Dome on the 23rd has a good crowd, not close to a sellout yet. If Mizzou beats Kansas State Saturday, number 15 in the country, if Mizzou pulls out that victory, ticket sales will go up for that Memphis game. Yeah, I guarantee that. That Memphis game, by the way, is a 6:30 kickoff. But I'm going to gripe for a second. I've got a friend group who we travel. I've talked about it on the show many times. We travel every year to one road game to watch Mizzou play. We pick one venue we haven't been to yet, and we travel. This year, we've been to all the road venues. So we decided, well, let's make it a, you know how people do staycations? Well, we did a stay road trip. Our road trip, quote unquote, is the Memphis game in St. Louis. So we're all gathering, and we're expecting some friends to come in that aren't normally able to make those long road trips, but now it's an easy drive. Friends in Kansas City, friends in mid-Missouri. So we've got a group ready to hang out together and have some fun that weekend in St. Louis. And I'm working that game. It's technically a home game for Mizzou, so I'll be doing public address at the Dome, which I'm not complaining about that. I love that. However, I was really hoping for an 11 a.m. like it is this Saturday against Kansas State, or a 2:30 or a 3, because then after the game, I got time to hang out with my friends and go to a local establishment, eat some food and have a couple of adult beverages and be able to hang with my friends. Instead, it's a 6:30 kickoff, which means one of my good buddies has set up a tailgate for us, which is great. But I can't, quote unquote, have fun at the tailgate. Now, look, I'm beyond the age where I'm going to go to a tailgate and get like plastered like a college student. However, at a tailgate, Having a beer or two goes with going to the tailgate. Now I got to go to tailgate and drink water all afternoon. That is a bummer. And the game won't be over at 6:30 kickoff. That game won't be over till 10 o'clock. By the time you leave the dome, get in your car, get out of traffic, and you get somewhere to have a beer or something, it's going to be 11. And at our age, how many of my friends are hanging out after 11 o'clock? By the way, after having drinks all day. So I got screwed on that deal. Now I get to be the public address announcer for the game at the Dome. So look, there's trade-offs. I'm happy about that. But man, I was really pulling for the early start. Anyway, let's break down a little bit of this Mizzou Kansas State game. What does Mizzou need to do to win this game? Well, let's first start with last year. Mizzou got hammered. 40-12, I think, was the final score. It was in the rain and slop. It was pouring down rain the entire game. So you got to take that as a factor. Yes, I know. Making excuses. I get it. K-State had to play in that same weather, and they scored 40 points. I get it. However, let's break down those numbers from last year. Last year, Kansas State had 336 total yards. That's not, when you look at yardage, that's not a dominating number, 336 yards. Problem with that is Mizzou only had 222 total yards. K-State only threw for 101 passing yards. Adrian Martinez rushed for 52 yards and a touchdown, but he only completed less than 50% of his passes, and he threw for 101 yards. The key last year for Missouri is they could not stop the run. Deuce Vaughn, who is now in the NFL, had 24 carries for 145 yards, 2 touchdowns. DJ Giddens, who is back this year, rushed for 29 yards on 2 carries, had a long touchdown run, 28 yards in the fourth quarter. Phillip Brooks is their best receiver, but he only caught 3 balls last year. So the key last year was Mizzou could not stop the run. Kansas State rushed for 235 yards, 5.5 yards per carry. K-State was only 4 for 13 on third down, 31%. They also had a punt return for a touchdown. So, special teams touchdown. They ran the ball all over Mizzou. But for the first 3 quarters, Kansas State only had 2 offensive touchdowns. 2 long rushing touchdowns came in the fourth quarter when that Mizzou defense was gassed because they couldn't stop the run. They were on the field all game because the other part to that was the offense struggled. 128 yards passing, only 94 yards rushing in that game. Schrader had just 6 carries for 19 yards. Nate Pete had 13 carries for 10 yards. Just an abysmal rushing day for the Tigers. And last year, 3 receivers who are no longer on this year's roster had 3 catches each. Lovett, Dove, and Bannister. Whole new receiving group coming in this year. Mizzou's defense had no sacks, only 1 tackle for loss, and a fumble recovery. Kansas State's defense dominated Mizzou. 1 sack, 10 tackles for loss, and 4 picks. Cook had 2 interceptions. Jack Abraham, who was the backup quarterback, threw 3 passes, didn't complete 1, and threw 2 interceptions. It was just a bad day for the Tigers last year, and give Kansas State credit, they dominated. So what is Mizzou focused on doing this year? Running the ball. You've seen it the last 2 games. They have to be able to run. They couldn't last year against Kansas State's defense. What has Mizzou done this year? What did they do last week against Middle Tennessee? I'll compare that game against Kansas State's game against Troy. Mizzou held Middle Tennessee to 2.4 yards per carry, just 71 rushing yards. They got to do the same this week against Kansas State. They got to stop the run. They can't turn the ball over. They have to stop the run. They can't give up a special teams touchdown. And Mizzou's defense has to create more havoc this year than they did last year against Kansas State. So let's compare what's going on this year. Kansas State, 2-0. They've played SEMO. Mizzou played South Dakota. Mizzou won 35-10. Kansas State won 45-0. So let's compare last week's games. K-State beat Troy 42-13. Mizzou beat Middle Tennessee 23-19. Kansas State last week gave up 286 yards to Troy. Mizzou gave up 285 to Middle Tennessee. Defense is similar. As a matter of fact, it was similar in the pass versus rush as well. K-State gave up 268 passing yards, 58% completion rate to Troy. Mizzou gave up 214 passing yards, 61% to Troy. Kansas State allowed just 70 rushing yards last week, 2.5 yards per carry. Mizzou gave up 71 rushing yards last week, 2.4 yards per carry. Here was a big difference. Troy was 6 of 17 on third down, just 35%. Middle Tennessee was 50% on third down. Mizzou's got to be better on third down defensively. Mizzou had 4 sacks, 7 tackles for loss last week against Middle Tennessee. 4 sacks, 12 tackles for loss. Kansas State had 4 sacks, 9 tackles for loss, but they created 2 turnovers. Mizzou has yet to take advantage of the turnovers. They have not gotten they didn't get an interception or a fumble recovery last week. Tigers defense is going to need some turnovers. If I remember, that was a little bit of a bugaboo last year. Great in terms of yards per game allowed, 4th in the SEC for the Mizzou's defense, but they are not creating enough turnovers. Kansas State had almost 400 yards of total offense last week. Mizzou had 316. Kansas State threw the ball 32 times, ran it 38 times, and were relatively successful in both. Kansas State, 66% completion percentage for Will Howard, who also had, he's a senior, 8 carries for 32 yards and 2 rush touchdowns, and then he threw for 3. He's a 6'5" quarterback, big, and he can move. That's going to be hard for the Mizzou defense to defend. 250 passing yards for Howard. Brady Cook threw 19 times. Completed 74% of his passes, 204 yards. He had 12 carries and a touchdown. Mizzou's rush offense rushed for 112 yards on 46 carries. Let's remember, they lost 18 yards on the final 3 plays of the game. So that would have been about 130 yards of rush offense for the Tigers on 43 carries. The Tigers were 54% on third down last week. That's a good number. Kansas State was 10 of 15, 67% on third down last week versus Troy. And Middle Tennessee was 50% against the Tigers last week. The Tigers have to get off the field on third down. 7 different receivers caught balls last week for Kansas State. Phillip Brooks had 7 for 94 and a touchdown. He's their leading receiver. He's from Lee Summit. He's a senior. Good player. For the Tigers, 6 different receivers, but Burden had 8 of the 14 catches. Mizzou really is going to have to diversify in the passing game. Weiss has to be involved. Mookie Cooper has to be involved. You got to get some balls out to the backs. It can't be Luther Burden-centric, even though he's got to get his touches. They've got to be more diverse. So for the Tigers to win, I see a path to victory here. And yeah, I'm gonna name off a list of things, but this is true almost every week, right? You can't allow a special teams touchdown like they did last year. You got to create a couple of turnovers and turn those into points. You have to be able to take some shots downfield. I mean, Brady Cook averaged 14.8 yards per catch last week. That's a huge number. That's good. You got to throw the ball more than 19 times. So, and you got to do what you couldn't do last year, and that's run the ball against Kansas State. You've got to be able to run the ball. The 43 carries for 130 yards before the last 3 runs, it's a little concerning. That's just over 3 yards a carry. You've got to run the ball better than that this week. You have to get them off the field on third down. But the defense itself, in terms of allowing yards per game, has been fine. They've got to create some turnovers. That's going to be a big thing. And Will Howard is a hard quarterback to defend because he'll throw it on you and he can run it on you. He's 6'5", 240. Big dude. It's not going to be an easy victory. The Tigers will have the crowd behind them, sellout crowd. Mizzou is definitely talented enough to win this game. Limit the mistakes, create a couple of turnovers, get off the field on third down. Don't allow chunk plays like they did last year. Look at that. 24-yard touchdown run for K-State last year, 28-yard touchdown run for last year, a 76-yard touchdown reception, or a punt return touchdown, sorry. You can't allow those big plays. And then you'll hang in this game and you got a chance to win against number 15. I'm going to be positive here, and I'm going to say 27-24 Mizzou. I know, I'm a homer. I mean, a lot of people going, oh, that's a homer pick. Yeah, I'm a homer. And by the way, for everyone on the Mizzou forums and the people on the air who are like, Mizzou's going to get killed. You know, Vegas has Kansas State as a 5-point favorite. It's not like they have, like Kansas State comes in here a 2-touchdown favorite. 5 points, 1 touchdown. And they're ranked, and we're not. So, come on. I think there's a path to victory here. Be able to run the ball. You've got to be able to complete passes more. You got to be able to drop back and be able to run your passing game more than 19 times in a game. Limit penalties and mistakes. Create a couple of turnovers on defense. Don't allow chunk touchdowns. Quick drives. I get it. That's a lot. I'm listing a lot of things. That's true every game, right? But Mizzou's capable of that. They have the personnel. They're capable of playing that way. They did that with Georgia. They were beating the number 1 team in the country for 3.5 quarters and let it slip away in the fourth. They had Auburn beat on the road last year. They hung with Florida, who was ranked at the time. Come on. Mizzou can hang. Mizzou has the personnel and the ability to hang with this team. Now they got to just go out and execute. All right. I do want to talk about, before we get off the air here, the NFL and my week 1 impressions. I mentioned it at the top of the show. My gosh. If you're a New York Jets fan, I feel so sorry for you. I just do. This franchise, the hype all season was Aaron Rodgers going to the Jets. Hall of Fame quarterback, 4-time MVP, Super Bowl champ. Yes, his play declined last year, for sure, at 38 years old. But could they get enough production out of him to help a stacked roster make a deep playoff run? And everyone seemed to think that was possible. I was buying into the hype. They have the one of the offensive rookies of the year last year, Garrett Wilson at wide receiver, stud receiver. Rodgers brought in 2 receivers, helped bring in 2 receivers that he's familiar with. He's played with Randall Cobb his entire career and Alan Lazard from the Packers. They have a decent tight end in Tyler Conklin. Their running game, Breece Hall and Dalvin Cook, elite. Probably one of the top 3 defenses in the NFL. You saw it on display. They created 4 turnovers on Josh Allen on Monday night. They have a great defense, one of the best in football. You put Aaron Rodgers in there. Nathaniel Hackett came over to run the offense, who Rodgers worked with in Green Bay for a number of years. This was lining up to be a fun year for the New York Jets and their fans. And then he comes in and in 4 plays, ruptures his Achilles tendon. He's out for the year. And at 39 years old, that recovery is going to be hard. Cardinal fans remember, Adam Wainwright tore his Achilles tendon in his early 30s, ruptured it. He wasn't the same for 2 years. That is a tough injury for anybody, especially someone 39. Wouldn't surprise me if Aaron Rodgers said, I'm done. I've had a great career. Because can he be a good quarterback 1 year removed at 39, 40 years old next year with the Jets? I think that'll be tough. I don't know, man. But let me give you some overreaction thoughts, some not overreaction thoughts. And I'm going to try to run down this list real quick. Week 1 is always funky, so you can never really make opinions about teams after week 1. The Cincinnati Bengals started 1-2 last year, 0-2, I think, to start the year. Joe Burrow threw 4 interceptions his first week of the season last year. Guess what? Happened again this week. Cleveland stomped Cincinnati. Burrow had just 82 passing yards. He looked terrible. And the Bengals lost to Cleveland on the road. A little bit of an overreaction, but I think Cleveland's defense is going to be much better. They brought in Jim Schwartz. That guy was the defensive coordinator for the Eagles when they beat Tom Brady and the Patriots in the Super Bowl. He's a good defensive coordinator. The Browns' defense is going to be good. They're going to be better than people think, I think, because of that defense. And they can run the ball with Nick Chubb, one of the best backs in football. He had 100 yards again against the Bengals. But Cincinnati always takes 1 to 2 to 3 weeks to get going, and then they just start stomping people. So I have no concern with the Bengals yet. And Joe Burrow missed the preseason because of a calf injury, so he didn't play. Monday was his first game action, or last Sunday. I think the Bengals are going to be okay. The Jacksonville Colts game was close for 3.5 quarters before Jacksonville pulled away. Jacksonville's a favorite to win the AFC South. Everyone loves Trevor Lawrence. They won a playoff game last year. The Jaguars are good, and the Colts hung with them, and the Colts are going to be terrible. Again, first week, Jacksonville pulls out the victory, and now they host the Chiefs this week, which should be a fantastic game because the Chiefs will get Chris Jones, their best defensive player, back, Travis Kelce, the best tight end in football, maybe in history, back this week. So that's going to be a phenomenal game. Chiefs at Jaguars. San Francisco destroyed Pittsburgh on the road. If you remember me talking with Ashley last week when we were making predictions, I was high on Pittsburgh. I think they're going to be a surprise. I still think they will. They have great skill positions at running back and wide receiver. Their defense is going to be great. It was one of those first game things. The Steelers are going to end up being okay. But man, I am not overreacting when I say if the Niners stay healthy, that is a dominant team in the NFC. Dominant. And Brock Purdy looked fantastic coming off the injury and throwing in his first game against a good defense on the road. Man, he looked good. Man, the Niners, if they stay healthy with McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, and that defense is so good. Oh, the Niners are fun. I was a little concerned, but I think this will change because it was just week 1. Baltimore struggled at home against Houston. And Lamar Jackson did not have a big game, and they have a new offensive coordinator. My concern there is that they're not going to let Lamar Jackson be Lamar Jackson, and they're going to try to contain him and make him more of a pocket passer. Does he need to be more of a pocket passer? I think so. But they also have to give him the freedom to be able to run the ball because he's so dynamic with his legs. And he seemed almost over-controlled against Houston. He rushed for 38 yards. He was their leading rusher. And then J.K. Dobbins, stop me if you've heard this before, got hurt, ruptured his Achilles tendon. They're starting running back. He gets hurt every year. So now, what is that new offense going to do with Lamar Jackson? Are they going to force him to stay in the pocket more and make him more of a reserved quarterback and not let him use his feet? That, to me, is concerning. And Baltimore's defense is not going to be as good as it's been in years past. So that was a little bit of a concern for me. Green Bay, a surprise. Jordan Love, a surprise to most. My thought, as I told Ashley last week, if Jordan Love can just do what Aaron Rodgers did last year, which was have a bad year, but be a little bit better than that, the Packers are going to be a good team. They won 9 games last year with subpar quarterback play. They have a good defense. They've got 2 stud running backs. Jordan Love looked really good in his first game as a starter. The Packers dominated the Bears. Dominated. Philly squeaked out a win against New England and did not look good doing it in their first week. The Rams on the road, everyone was like, including me last week, the Rams aren't going to be good. They go to Seattle and stomp the Seahawks in week 1. I hate it. I don't like the Rams. But they have a good head coach. They've got a lot of good young players who are unproven. Could that team step up? They did in week 1. Or is the surprise of the return of Geno Smith over? Is he just not really that good? He surprised everyone last year. And I believe I heard over the last 7 games last year, or over the last 7 games, the Seahawks have been 2-5, and Geno Smith has not been good. So is the rose worn off there? I don't know. Are the Rams better than we thought, or are the Seahawks worse than we thought? I don't know. We're week 1, so we'll see what happens. Dallas dominated the Giants. Again, I think that's a week 1 thing. The weather wasn't great, but the Giants looked terrible. I don't think it stays that way. I think the Giants will still be decent. Dallas got 2 touchdowns from their defense and special teams, not their offense. So, I don't know. Dak Prescott only threw for 143 yards. So that's a week 1 thing. The Bills will be better than they showed Monday night, but they played a very, very good Jets defense. And the Jets are not going to win a lot of games if they don't have a very good quarterback, because they have the skill positions. Now they need a guy who can distribute. Is Zach Wilson that guy? I'm skeptical. So we'll see. But man, some interesting storylines going into week 2. I always say, now that we have a 17-game schedule and most of the regular starters don't play in the preseason, nothing starts to normalize until week 3. So whatever you see in the first couple weeks, take it with a grain of salt. The Chiefs losing to Detroit, if they had Travis Kelce, they win that game. They had 8 drops by their wide receivers. A lot of those throws to those receivers would have gone to Kelce. So let's hold back on overreacting to any of this stuff. But there are some fun, as we get set to close the show, there are some fun matchups this week. Chiefs at Jags. You've got the Niners at the Rams. The Rams get tested now after their surprise last week. The Jets go to Dallas, 2 elite defenses. That's going to be fun. Miami, who played the most exciting game of the week against the Chargers. That was a fun game, 36-34. They go to New England to play that defense. So we'll see how the Dolphins offense operates. It's going to be fun, man. Week 2 coming up in the NFL. Can't wait. This has been the Mole Hole with Randy Molman. Thank you for joining. Have fun at Mizzou on Saturday. MIZ for the Tigers. And until next Thursday at 8 a.m. So long, everybody.